Well, this morning we're continuing in our Following Jesus series through the book of Luke, and this is our last one in chapter 18 and our last one for a while. We're going to take a break from Luke for a bit, and so this is kind of a cool stopping point. And I'm excited about the passage that we get to walk through this morning. And one of the things that kind of came up for me when I was looking at this is it reminded me of when I was growing up. I heard a lot of talk. There was a lot of people that would talk to me about that basically there are two kinds of people in this world. That there was leaders and there was followers, and you should be a leader. And the implication in there is like if you're a follower, then you're not committed to things, and like you don't have values, and so you're just going to become whoever you're hanging around and all this kind of stuff. And while there was some well-meaning advice in there, it's probably not as clean as like you're either a follower or a leader and there's no other options, like there's no bridge in between, right? But what's interesting about that to me is like there is something about us as people that we do have this propensity to kind of chameleon towards the people around us over time. Like who you spend time with often impacts who you become. It's pretty simple, just kind of the way the world works. And there's this reality that happens that a lot of times we spend time and energy thinking about little things and how it might affect the way other people view us. One of the ways I saw this very clearly in my life was when I was a youth pastor and social media was first kind of taking off big time. This is like 2005-ish, Facebook's out, it's just starting to surpass MySpace. And at that point, it was mainly a like teenager and college student environment. And I was watching students as they would like curate these online identities and personas that sometimes were fairly accurate to who they were, and sometimes was like completely not who they were at all, and they're just putting this thing out there of who they wish they would be or who they thought people would like them for. And then there was this one girl that was in a friend's youth group, another youth pastor's youth group, that was talking to him one day. He's like, man, I'm so excited to get a Facebook profile. And he's like, don't you already have one? She's like, well, I do, but last year I was an athlete. And so all my stuff on that page is all about me being an athlete, and this year I'm going to be a country girl. And so I want a new profile that doesn't have any of that athlete and stuff on there and only has this stuff as a country girl. So I'm going to create a whole new profile for this. And it's kind of silly, right? Like it seems like, okay, like we'll hold up a little bit. But the thing is that behind that, I'm looking at my own life and I'm like, man, I don't do it in that like blatant of a way, but I do this. The people I'm around or where I'm going to be, I think in the mornings, like I literally took like 5 minutes to decide which shoes to wear this morning, thinking it would matter. Hopefully it doesn't matter, right? Please? No, I need some affirmation. No. But literally, you're like, who cares? But I do that. And with what I'm wearing, or what car I'm driving, or what neighborhood I live in. All these things, I start to look at these things, not just like, how is it going to affect me, but how is it going to affect the way other people view me? And underneath this, what I think is happening is that what drives what we do, the choices we make and the choices we don't make, are often like values and beliefs that we aren't necessarily on the top of our minds. They're kind of below the surface a little bit. There's simple ones that are on the top of our minds, like what music you like, what sports teams you cheer for, if you're someone that hates mosquitoes or cicadas. There's little things. But then there's these deeper things of like, what do I really think a successful life would look like? What does it mean to have purpose in this life? What does it look like to live in a world with pain and suffering and goodness and grace? And how do those things all mix together? And underneath the surface, there's these values and these things that I don't even know if I could name really clearly that are driving the way I interact with the world around me. Driving the way I walk into settings like this room. And what's interesting is I think that this is true of all of us. I don't think it's just me. And this morning in our passage, what we're going to find is that following Jesus will challenge the way we operate in the world. If we're going to follow Jesus honestly, if we're going to follow Jesus and become more like him, it will challenge the ways that we naturally operate in the world. It won't just be this little cherry on top to the way we're already living. It'll challenge us in the ways we treat people, in the ways we interact with stuff, and all of that. This is true in our passage today for a few different groups of people. All of them have this chance and have this opportunity to fail forward a little bit, to look at how following Jesus is impacting the way that they would normally operate and where he's inviting them to be a little bit different. His disciples are getting closer and closer to this destination in the Gospel of Luke. They're almost to Jerusalem. And when they get to Jerusalem, it's the triumphal entry. It's when they lift Jesus up as king and what we celebrate on Palm Sunday. That's in the next chapter. We're almost there. And so as they're journeying towards Jerusalem, they approach Jericho now. Jericho's 18 miles away from Jerusalem. It's north, but it's downhill because Jerusalem's on the top of the mountain. And it's this famous place throughout Scripture and this famous place in Israel's history. And it's kind of the last town before you make the journey up to Jerusalem. And when Jesus is just before walking into this town, he had this conversation with the disciples. It's what Mac talked about last week, where he says, listen, I'm going to be killed and beaten and buried and then rise again. It says, and they didn't understand what he was talking about till later. And it's after that we get to our verses today. So if you have a Bible, paper, or digital, you can open up to chapter 18, verse 35. Otherwise, verses will be up on the screen. Starting in verse 35. As Jesus approached Jericho, a blind man was sitting by the roadside begging. When he heard the crowd going by, he asked what was happening. They told him, Jesus of Nazareth is passing by. He called out, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. Those who led the way rebuked him and told him to be quiet, but he shouted all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. Jesus stopped and ordered the man to be brought to him. When he came near, Jesus asked him, what do you want me to do for you? Lord, I want to see, he replied. Jesus said to him, receive your sight. Your faith has healed you. Immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus, praising God. And when all the people saw it, they also praised God. So right after Jesus tells the disciples, like, this is what's going to happen next. I'm going to be murdered, killed, and rise again. He has this opportunity to restore the sight of a man born blind. He has this opportunity to show some divine power in what he's able to do. And it's really cool because when Jesus first comes on the scene in the book of Luke, when he's just starting his public ministry, he's back in his hometown in Nazareth. He's in the synagogue, and he grabs the scroll for the reading for the day, which is from the book of Isaiah, and he reads this. He says, the Spirit of the Lord is on me because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoner and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. He reads this and says, this was what you just heard, it's about me. I'm here to fulfill that. You're looking at the fulfillment of this promise. I'm here to free people from oppression. I'm here to give the blind sight. And as Jesus is about to enter what we call Holy Week now, he has a chance to show that, yeah, he really was here to do that very thing. In the last days before he is going to be crucified, he recovers the sight for a blind beggar in a city that has a ton of meaning to the people reading and listening today. Jericho was this town where it has this cool history where in the Old Testament, God delivered it to the Israelites in this really crazy way. And earlier in Luke, when Jesus shares the parable of the Good Samaritan, it happens on the same road on the way to Jericho, between Jerusalem and Jericho. And in that story, the religious people see someone in need and continue to pass on by. And this time, Jesus is the one that's passing by and stops, even though people try to stop the man from coming to him, to show care and concern. There's some stuff wrapped up in here. There's big things happen in Jericho. In the first century, those who were beggars, they had a defined role in society. There was a job for them to do. It's a little bit different than how we interact today. Because in their society, one of the things that Jewish people believed is that giving to the poor was one of the things God required of you. Helping those in need was one of the things that God required of you if you were faithful. And so that they viewed beggars as their way to actually do the thing that God was commanding them to do. So there was this little codependent relationship where the beggars would get what they need, money to eat and live. And the Jewish people who were trying to be religiously faithful got to do the thing that they thought they were supposed to do by giving to somebody. And what was different about it than today, too, is the way that they would kind of posture it. For us today, a lot of times when you're encountering someone who's homeless or things like that, and there's different circumstances at play. There's definitely not a humanizing element often. We just don't humanize people well that are different in those situations. But even the way that they would ask for money at this time, they wouldn't say like, hey, I really need to eat. I got hurt in this way. Can you give me some money for me and my family? It was nothing like that. It was like, I can help you give to God. I'm here to give you this opportunity that you can give to God. You can be perceived as religious to all those who are around you. And I'll even announce loudly when you do it, so that all the people around you will see how godly and how religious you actually are. It was this bizarre, codependent thing. It says, my needs are besides the point. I'm offering you this golden opportunity to fulfill one of your obligations to God. In this public place, you will gain great reputation because of it. When someone would give, a beggar would often stand up and just loudly say, "This man is a great man. He's generous, and I pray that God would bless his family, his wives, his children, everyone in his life, because he's such a good man." So if you're a religious person, or at least wanting to appear religious at the very least, it was a good move to give to one of these guys, because it would up your status in the community and maybe get to do the thing that you thought you were supposed to do for God. The main roads in Jericho were common spaces for the beggars to be, especially at the time of year we're talking about here, because it's the main route up to Jerusalem goes through Jericho. So all the people who are traveling for the Passover feast that's coming soon are heading to Jerusalem for religious reasons. And so if you're a beggar, this is prime spot to be, because you know people are going to be thinking about the things they're supposed to be doing for God as they're coming through this town. And so the scenario is set up in that way. This beggar, he notices this frenzy of activity around him. He hears this chaos around him. He asks the people around him, like, what's going on? What is this? And they say, well, Jesus of Nazareth is coming through. And it's amazing because Jesus' reputation from the last 3 or so years is so big that you can just say, Jesus of Nazareth is coming through. And the blind man's like, I know who that is, and he can help me. His reputation has gotten so big that it says there's crowds following him into the city. And in the ancient Near East and in some Middle East cultures today even, if you want to honor somebody and show that you value them, when they come into town, you head outside the town to meet them, to walk in with them, sometimes more than miles outside. And so Jesus' reputation has grown so big by the things he's said and the things that he has done that there's a crowd that's met him out the city and is now coming into the city, and this beggar hears it, asks what's going on, hears it's Jesus of Nazareth. And he cries out, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And it says those who were leading the way tried to silence him. Shh, just stop. Be quiet. And he cries out louder, Son of David, have mercy on me. It's an interesting thing to me because the disciples were probably in the group that's leading the crowd here. The crowd are people that are trying to orient themselves around Jesus and the things he's taught, the things that he's done. And after all these things, this opportunity comes up and their first move is still like, shh, stop. Don't do that. Why would they silence him? This person's in need. Why would they silence him? And there's two main reasons that commentators kind of throw out there, and I think there's validity to both. The first is that Jesus is pretty important. That people perceive him as this really important guy. They're honoring him as like this dignified, great person coming to their city. And then there's this guy, this beggar, that's trying to disrupt their parade. Dude, just be quiet. It's not the right time for this. Learn your time and place. Maybe sometime when Jesus has less people around him and we're not doing this important thing for him, then maybe he'll have time to heal you. Right now, just stop. Just be quiet. That's possible. The other reason, and it's one that I think it may be more at play, is very political. It's a very political move. Luke's gospel is a very political gospel in the sense of it was written in a very political setting with the Roman Empire at that time. Rome is in control. They have a thumb down on Israel. And a lot of the language, even in the birth narratives and the Christmas stories in Luke about that are ascribed to Jesus, are things that people would say to Caesar as well. Like this is a political statement of a book. And when this man cries out, Son of David, that meant something. Because the title Son of David meant that this man, I'm recognized that he might be the Messiah. He might be the coming king. He might be the anointed one that's going to put Israel back on the map. It's going to kick Rome out and put Israel back on top. When he's saying the name Son of David, it's not something that the Israelites want the Romans to hear being shouted. Because the Romans, if we know anything about them, they were really, really good at squelching any attempt at rebellion, quickly and violently. And so the Romans are probably on high alert, man, Passover time. Tons of Jewish people are pilgrimaging back to Jerusalem. There's going to be this undercurrent of Messiah, undercurrent of a day when we can get back on top. And now there's this guy yelling to Jesus that he might be the Son of David, and he's putting our lives and the lives of Jesus at risk by doing so. Rome was swift at stopping insurrections. Some of these leading the procession into the town, they try to silence Jesus. And whether it was because of politics, people not thinking that the beggar was worthy of connecting with Jesus, it was just an inconvenient time or some other reason we don't know. One of the things that Luke has been emphasizing through this entire chapter of his gospel, through chapter 18, is that those closest to Jesus were missing the point when it came to Jesus' mission and how he treated and loved other people. They often were missing the point in that there's all these lessons that they're falling forward into. At the start of this chapter, these people are trying to get their children to Jesus so they can be blessed by him. The disciples are like, stop it. Get these kids out of here. And Jesus welcomes them in and says, no, like, this is a lesson for you guys that your faith should be like children because the kingdom of God cannot be earned. It's just something you receive. With the rich young ruler, there's this picture of a man who loved his possessions so deeply. And Jesus is saying, like, listen, the kingdom of God belongs to those who are spiritually poor, not those who are upward and to the right only, but spiritually poor. It has nothing to do with the wealth, actually. He tells the disciples about this, like getting mocked and insulted and beaten and flogged and killed and rising again, and they miss it. And after hearing all these things, they're heading into this town. They're getting close to Jerusalem for Passover, and a man in need cries out, and they're like, shh, stop. They're still missing it. This doesn't just happen here. All throughout the scriptures, throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament, there's story after story of when people try to develop a heart like God's for others people, for those who are different than them, for those who might be the outsider or the outcast, that there's a lot of work to be done because it doesn't come very natural to us. And Jesus is doing this again here. There's this man that needs help. And if we're not embodying God's heart to him, then he just stays on the outside. And part of this is that part of following Jesus is bringing others to Jesus. Part of following Jesus is bringing other people to Jesus. This is one of the ways that we're challenged. As we are walking with Jesus, and for people who are following him, each day as you go into your workplace, into your neighborhoods, into the coffee shop and gym, wherever you spend your time, you're walking in there with Jesus. He's with you. And it's almost like I have this picture from this of it's almost like we're in this parade thing with him, right? And we're walking into Starbucks or we're walking into our workplace or the Y or wherever, and together, and there's these times where Jesus is going to be like, that person, I'd like you to talk to them. Shh, Jesus, stop. It's an inconvenient time. Not right now. Maybe later. Like right now we're doing this thing. Or Jesus, you don't understand that person's views on politics and religion or sports or whatever. You don't understand. I can't even have a conversation with them, let alone try and bring them to you. No, stop. Not right now. But part of following Jesus is bringing others to Jesus. And there's times that he will prompt us, even tell us to bring someone to him. And I feel like when I say it that way, that part of our job is to bring people to Jesus, it sounds kind of intimidating and awkward. Like Jesus is like, bring him to me. Okay. But what I'm really talking about is this, is doing our best to walk in step with Jesus. To be sensitive to the promptings that the Spirit may have for us as we can connect with other people and build relationships, and to notice where God is working in their lives and help them to see it as well. And this is an area, like a lot of times this is like evangelism is the word that the church has used to talk about this, that so much well-intentioned bad work has been done. Well-intentioned bad work. Well-intentioned in that, like as Christians, we all want to connect with people to help them with their faith or their lack of faith and help them to find ways to connect with Jesus. And that's crucial and huge and massively important. But the manners in which we often go about it runs into brick walls or even creates brick walls in people sometimes. And I think what it has to do with is we don't always know where people are actually at. And we come with this singular idea and method of what it means to bring someone to Jesus that only really works if someone's already right on the fringe of doing it. When we move towards other people relationally, our first move is to listen. Listen. Get to know their story. Ask tons of questions and then ask some more questions. Get to know people. Get to know what's behind why they think the way they do. And the reason this is so important is because if you don't know where someone's starting from, you have very little chance of getting them to where they need to go. Like, this makes sense with just maps and driving, right? Like, if someone called you and said, hey, I need to get to Milwaukee. Like, that's great. Are you in Chicago, Oconomowoc, or Wauwatosa? It kind of matters. If I don't know where someone's starting from, I have no ability to get them where they need to go. And so if we're not listening and getting to know people and understanding where they actually are at, it's really hard to discern what it looks like to meet them there and connect them more to Jesus. Sometimes the work is just praying for that person and just building relationship, shared experiences and time, because you care about them, not because they're your project. They're not your project. They're a human being that Jesus loves, and he's inviting you to love too. So you build relationship, you spend time, shared experiences. Sometimes that's the work. Sometimes people are so turned off to Christianity or God in general that coming in like guns blazing is going to do nothing for either of you. Some shared experience with someone who loves Jesus and can help awaken them to the work God is doing in their life as well. Sometimes it's naming how God is working in your life and looking for ways that he might be working in theirs and asking questions and trying to help them get to that space too where they see it. Sometimes it is saying, like, it seems like you're at this space, like, do you want to follow Jesus? Do you want to see him as Lord and King? But we get to that space by building relationships with people, by seeing where they're actually at. Because when we follow Jesus, one of our roles is to bring people to him, and we have to do that by meeting people where they actually are, not where we think they should be. Those leading Jesus into Jericho missed the situation. They misread it completely. When the beggar cries out, Jesus hears him, and he has the man brought to him. And when he gets there, Jesus asks him a question. What do you want from me? There's a kind of this cool move that happened that Jesus uses the very people that were like pushing the man away to be the ones that had to bring him back. Like, here's how you fail forward. Like, that guy you're stiff-arming, why don't you go say hi to him and bring him over here? You can be the people that bring him to me. But he asked the blind man this question. He's like, what do you want from me? And it's kind of an interesting question because it's pretty clear this man's a beggar. Jesus would have seen that and known that. To be a successful beggar, your disability would need to be pretty visible, or people would be like, yeah, he's just scamming me. So, like, this is a guy that would have been pretty clear, like, what's going on here. Jesus sees he's blind, he sees he's begging, and he doesn't just go, all right, come on over and I'll heal you. He says, what do you want from me? Maybe Jesus wants the beggar to have the dignity of actually being asked this question of, what do you want? It's probably something that doesn't happen very often in his life. What do you want? Maybe Jesus is just saying, like, listen, I know what I can do for you, but I'm never going to coerce and do something for you. Even if it's healing and something great for you, I will never force that upon you. What do you want from me? He's engaging the core of who this man is. He truly wants to know the desires of his heart. And beyond that, there's this hidden cost to the healing that I didn't see until I started reading up on this passage. Because in the first century, a man who was born blind and had been begging for however many years of his life, whether he's 15 or 35 or older, only knew how to beg. And so if all of a sudden he has sight and he can no longer beg, how does he provide for himself? He didn't grow up apprenticing in some role. He didn't grow up going through the school settings that would have taught him things. This was his role. And so for this man to say, like, yes, Jesus, I want healing, he's saying, I'm also willing to take the risk of what this might mean for me. This unknown. There's a cost to receiving his grace. Jesus asked the man, what do you want? And he says, Lord. He's moved from even like, you might be the Messiah, Lord, I want to see. I want to take the risk that the mercy you're showing on me by being willing to heal me is still available to me as I step forward from this space into an unknown future. I want to see. And Jesus says, receive your sight. Your faith has healed you. And it says he receives his sight, praises God, and follows Jesus. And to me, it's another like this visual thing. I just have the brain that does this. That I picture this like ancient Near Eastern busy street with people crowded all around the side, and there's this activity in the middle, and people are watching and seeing what's happening. They see this guy who's been blind as long as they've known him. all of a sudden see, start rejoicing and praising God, and fall in line with the people who are following Jesus as they journey towards Jerusalem. Like he receives the grace. He responds faithfully and falls in line as someone who's following Jesus. He has an incredible, incredible journey in these 8 verses, right? He goes from sitting on the side of the road at a busy time, which is a great time to beg, to literally being in the parade for Jesus. He goes from like knowing of this guy, Jesus of Nazareth, that he's heard about that does all these great things, to thinking maybe he's the son of David, to like experiencing the mercy and grace that Jesus has for him, and then extending it forward. And we don't know what happens. Like these are like the stories that I want to hear the rest of the story to. Like, yeah, but what happened to the dude, man? Like, what happened? Did he like stay destitute? Did he journey with Jesus and the other people all the way to the Jerusalem and stay with the disciples and was part of that upper room and part of that first church? I don't know. Both things are possible, and a whole lot of other things. But what this points out for you and I is this: is that following Jesus will not solve all your problems, and it might even bring about some new ones. Following Jesus will not solve all your problems, and it might even bring about some new ones. Like, I've never had to work a day in my life. I'm a beggar, and I don't know what to do. It's a new problem to have. It's kind of disappointing, right? Like, I wish this was, like, totally different. Like, that Jesus would just solve all my little problems and not bring any new ones in. I have enough. No new ones, Jesus. Just what I have. Fix those ones, and we'll be good. We have these longings that point towards the way the world is supposed to be ordered, that things would be fair and right, and we wouldn't have to deal with it. That there wouldn't be suffering and pain and all these trials, and it's right to have that desires. Those things grieve Jesus as well. And there's this temptation to believe, especially in the Western modern world, that like following Jesus means the rest of my life will be upward and to the right. Everything should be good, and if it's not going good, I must be doing something wrong. And this is totally wrong. It's totally wrong. I'm not saying that Jesus doesn't care about what's going on in your life. He cares deeply. I'm not saying that he's not working in your life and ahead of you. He absolutely is. What I'm saying is that when we talk about Jesus like he's a product that's supposed to fix the broken things in our lives and just make it simple and easy moving forward, we're missing the point. Jesus is not a spiritual WD-40 or duct tape that you can apply to any situation and just make it work. It's not how it works. When we approach Jesus in this way, we approach him as if he's there, he exists, his purpose for existing is our happiness. Our happiness. In 2005, there was a study done by the National Study of Youth and Religion. Christian Smith was the lead researcher on this. And it was to assess what do American teenagers believe about God. So 14 years ago now. What do American teenagers believe about God? And the researchers coined this term and said most teenagers in America hold to what we're going to call moral therapeutic deism. Moral therapeutic deism, MTD for short, because moral therapeutic deism is a mouthful. What moral therapeutic deism is this idea that there's a God up there somewhere. He really cares that we're all really kind to each other. He exists primarily because the central goal of our life is to be happy and feel good about ourselves. And he doesn't really need to be involved in our lives except for when we need him to resolve a problem. This was like the baseline for most teenagers in 2005. And what I love about these kinds of studies is like, where do teenagers come up with their ideas? The grown-ups. They're grown-ups. This is what people, parents and whoever, this was their undergirding core belief of who God was. Is he's up there. We don't really have to connect with him much. He cares that you're really happy and you feel pretty good about yourself. And you can just kind of leave him out there until you really need something. And it's easy for people who have grown up in church or have been in church for a while to look, it's like, well, that's completely off base. And like, yeah, of course, sure. But when I examine my own life, man, do I treat God like this sometimes? Like, hey, Jesus, we haven't talked in a couple weeks, but today's pretty crappy. You want to do something about that? I'd feel a lot better about myself if you did. And I notice this pattern in my life, man, like it's easy to fall into this space where I'm relating to Jesus in this way. And it's kind of one of the curses of living in a first world country. We can. Haitians don't have to think about this the way we do. They're so much more dependent on God because they have to be. God is not a genie or a vending machine. That's not how it works. This is not reality as Jesus describes it. Following Jesus is not ultimately about my happiness, but it's not ultimately about me feeling guilty and ashamed and worthless either. Neither of those are true. That's not the point. Like sometimes we pendulum swing, well, if it isn't about my happiness, I must just like sit in my wretchedness then all the time. No. Jesus came to speak good news over you. He came to set the oppressed free, to make the blind see. He came and lived and died and rose again. We can have this connection with God, and following him will restore us in ways that we don't even comprehend. Following Jesus is recognizing that he's the king of everything. Aligning our lives to join his work in the restoration of everything that he's doing in the world. Our lives, the people around us, the whole world. It's seeing him as the Lord and the King and discerning his voice and his leading and responding faithfully to whatever he is inviting you and us to do, knowing it might be difficult and costly. It may not solve problems we already have, and it might create ones that we weren't even sure of yet. This morning in the first service, the blue box went around, and both people shared stories of like, God has been doing this thing the last few months, and I've been trying to run from it because it seems really hard, but as I'm leaning into it, I'm finding the grace for it. And knowing this is the thing he has for me, even though I don't want to, because it seems simpler and I'd have more fun if I didn't do this thing. The healed beggar follows Jesus praising God. And the last sentence, the second half of the last verse says that when all the people saw it, they also praised God. When everyone else saw what happened, the whole crowd watching it, they praised God as well. The man called Jesus the Son of David, Lord. And Jesus shows that he has the power to actually heal this man. To those in the crowd witnessing this work, it's further proof that Jesus is the one they've been waiting for. This Messiah, this anointed one, the Son of David that they've been waiting for, that it is him. Yes, they're praising God because they saw Jesus do this incredible thing, but they're praising God thinking, this is it. This is it. He's finally come. And they journey with him all the way to Jerusalem, laud him as king on a Sunday, and by the next Friday, he's in the grave. The anticipation and the excitement of this carries all the way to that moment when they're going in to Jerusalem the next week. For the disciples in the crowd, the blind man's faith in healing is a gift that allows him to see Jesus more clearly. Seeing what happened in the blind man's life, recognizing that he called Jesus Son of David, he called him Lord, and seeing what happened gave the whole crowd a chance to see Jesus more clearly than they would have without experiencing this. The blind man is not the only person who undergoes a journey and is challenged in how they operate in the world. The disciples do. The crowd does. Everyone there does. And this is one of the reasons that being in community with other Jesus followers is so important. Being in community with others who are following Jesus will allow us to see Jesus more clearly. You and I being in community with other Jesus followers gives us the opportunity to see Jesus more clearly than we ever could see him sitting by ourselves with our Bibles all the time. This is why we take space to share God's stories each and every week. It's why, because we want the opportunity to see how God is working in somebody else's life. This is why when we meet with a group of other people for the purpose of becoming more like Jesus, that often it's the work that God is doing in their lives that encourages us and spurs us on, not just what he's doing in ours. It's why when we go through seasons of trial and suffering, that being in community, being surrounded by people who love God and us, is often how we most tangibly feel the presence and love of God for us. And when we go through deep seasons of doubt and despair, it's often other people's journeys ahead of us, alongside us, that carry us when we don't know how to carry on ourselves. being in community with others who are following Jesus will allow us to see Jesus more clearly. Following Jesus will challenge the way we operate in this world. It'll challenge the way that we relate to people as we discern who Jesus may be inviting us to lean into relationally, to encourage and bring along. It will challenge the way we relate to our problems. Doesn't mean they're not real. They're absolutely real. But it can change the way we relate to them, knowing that God doesn't exist just for me to be happy, but in my tensions and problems, he's with me and for me and beside me. And that following him may bring difficulty and tensions that I wasn't expecting. It'll challenge us to live in community with others, knowing that as we do, we will see Jesus' work and who he really is with more clarity than if we journeyed alone. I don't know this week, I can't speak for you on what it means for God to challenge you this week, to speak good news over you and invite you to respond faithfully to that. I do know it doesn't happen through shame and coercion. It doesn't happen by forcing things. It happens by him inviting us to follow him, take faithful steps. And so if you know this week what it looks like for you to respond faithfully this week, run with it. Don't let the homework be the excuse that keeps you from doing the thing that Jesus is telling you to do, okay? But for the rest of us, here's some options maybe. First, is there someone in your life Jesus is inviting you to move towards in love? Take the next right step. Don't just think about it. Action here, embodied love. Is there someone in your workplace, in your neighborhood, in your body pump class, wherever, that God's inviting you to take that next right step with? Do it. Listen, get to know where they're at. Secondly, take time this week to encourage someone whose journey of faith has opened your eyes to see Jesus more clearly. Send a text, a card, a phone call, an email, something. Look towards your life and look at the people that have allowed you to see Jesus more clearly because of how he worked in their lives. Thank them for it and name it for them. Encourage them this week. Consider next week coming back, bringing up the security blanket, blue box, sharing how you saw God at work in your life, even if it's failing forward, guys. We learn a lot by failing forward. And we look forward to hearing your stories. Would you guys stand with me as we close in prayer? God, thank you for this morning. Thank you for everyone who could be here. Thank you for your love and your grace. Thank you, Jesus, that you are the Son of God. Thank you for the way you love us and pursue us and restore us. May we be faithful to what it is you're leading us towards today. In your name we pray. Amen. Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.